Mr. David McLain. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Dominic?
I'm good. I'm good. I hope that people who are listening to the audio have a chance to check it out on YouTube as well, because you have a perfectly done bow tie.
That's right.
It's a lost art.
It is. I started wearing them a few years ago, and then I would show up at places and people would ask where the bow tie was. So that's when it kind of became my thing. And
It's your thing.
yeah, be able to show up at conferences around the country and people know I'm the guy from Colorado.
You're the classy guy from Colorado.
That's right.
Yeah. Colorado's a beautiful place.
Absolutely. It's getting near to be ski season. I'm looking forward to it.
I've got to see you in your ski suit with the bow tie. That's the next level for you, Dave.
Right.
But listen, before you and I get back to the chit chat, because we've already talked a couple of times, Dave, who are you? And how the heck does it come to pass that you are speaking to this worldwide group of forward-facing construction and contracting entrepreneurs?
So my name is David McLain. I grew up in Denver. Went to law school here, graduating in 1998, falling into my first position with a firm, working for one of the partners then, who happened to be doing construction litigation. So I got my foray into construction litigation, have been doing that the entirety of my career since. Our firm just celebrated its 20th anniversary.
Hey, congrats. That's nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And from doing the litigation for 20 years, we've had, clients or insurance carriers reach out to us from time to time on the risk management side as well.
Oh,
if you've litigated the cases for 20 years, you see what goes wrong.
You start to see the gaps before they happen.
What you might be able to do differently to avoid it.
When you look at your client base, are they big developers? Are you representing subs quite often? Like, what is your typical client look like, so we know?
When we started the firm, it was almost entirely direct retention for a national home builder. When the market changed in Colorado in 2007, 2008, everybody pulled out of the multifamily world. Everybody quit building condominiums and townhomes. So at that point, we started doing more insurance defense work again, getting hired by the insurance companies to defend their insureds. So it really runs the gamut from, we still do work for some of the nation's largest home builders on a direct retention basis. And we do work on an insurance defense basis for, home builders with 3 people on staff.
Okay. Well, that's good, because a lot of our listeners I would imagine most of our listeners are on that side. Renovators, remodeling, roofing, fencing, siding, concrete, cabinetry.
Yeah.
You're smiling like, yep.
Represented all of these guys. Yeah. And
well, unfortunately, it's the reality of the situation. I have come to learn that, going down the legal path is a frustrating and expensive and sometimes a not very gratifying. If this is me speaking from a business owner's perspective. And then when you and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, we came up with the topic, how not to get sued or survive it if you do. So that's what's got me curious. Because regardless of what size business I'm in, I don't want to get sued.
Absolutely not. I think it's got to be the most inefficient and expensive method for dispute resolution ever developed. I'll tell clients on either side of it, if we get called, and we don't do any plaintiffs work, but if we get called by an owner or a contractor for that matter, looking for an attorney to litigate, we have a hard conversation about that, because I often tell them the only people who are going to win here are the lawyers.
Oh, you actually, that, because we say that. I didn't know you guys said it too.
Absolutely. I mean, the homeowner, the client are going to be dissatisfied when it's over. Yeah. And my client's going to hate me. I mean, it's even if you win, you've spent so much money on it. It's crazy. So it should absolutely always be looked at as the last resort.
Yeah. I do know that if our relationship comes down to the point where we're looking at the agreement, the contract, we're in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
And it's probably time for wisdom more than emotion.
That's true. Years ago, we used to do a lot of work or get a lot of calls, field a lot of calls from warranty departments for builders. And they'd say, hey, the homeowner called me about this issue. It's not covered by the warranty. What do I tell them? And I'd say, go make them happy. Because if you're using that warranty as the tool to say no, they're going to lawyer up and it's going to end up costing you more.
Yeah.
What's the cost of keeping that homeowner or that client happy? Whatever you spend in that warranty department saves you 5 times that much in litigation.
Kind of off topic, but why do we seem to be having construction quality problems today that I don't think we had 30 years ago? I know I'm asking the wrong professional, but doesn't it seem weird?
I don't know. I think a lot of it is endemic in society in whole, right? I mean, the days of learning a profession or getting a job with a company and making a career out of it don't happen anymore. I mean, we have one of our legal assistants that's been around for decades, but that's the exception, not the rule. Right. And we had a client years ago and we had a discussion about it. And he said, it used to be that I'd keep people for 10, 20 years. They would show up on time, clean and sober, took pride in their work. And we're really artisans, and it's just hard to find.
Yeah.
And in some of the trades, you hear stories of, the framing crews working on a square foot basis and getting stolen off jobs because they can make $1 or more per square foot going down the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's just seems like a much more transient labor force
than it ever was
before. I think has a lot to do with it. And then on top of that, you see new products all the time. Products will come out, not really knowing much about them, and you see what's wrong with it after it's in all these houses. I mean, I think that the largest example I can think of was, Weyerhaeuser with that flak jacket trusses a few years ago, put them in thousands of houses across the country and then realized they're, off-gassing formaldehyde. It's a mess. So.
Yeah, I thought you were going to talk about that plumbing pipe that was all the rage a couple of years ago. I mean, these things happen, right? So
right.
So I took us off topic there, Dave. Sorry. How do I run this business so I don't get sued? What do I need to do as a business owner to make sure we don't get sued?
We look at risk management as being a 3-legged stool. Okay. So we look at it and we'll talk with clients about first reducing risk as much as you can. And then we can talk about that a little bit more in detail. The second leg being risk transfer, using contracts to transfer the risk through indemnity clauses to the person or the entity best able to eliminate that risk. And then the third part of it is for those parts you can't reduce or eliminate is to insure it, making sure you have the proper insurance in place so that if you do find yourselves in the crosshairs of a lawsuit, you've got the insurance company standing behind you such that you're not paying for it out of your own pocket.
Now, I'm a small guy. It's like you said, I'm a 3-man crew. Maybe I'm a 6-man crew, including the office. These are some big words like reduce risk, risk transfer, insure risk. Well, how do I get started? I'm committed. I want to make sure I'm running a good, solid company. I don't want anybody coming after me or my family. I'm committed to doing quality work, but I still have to be smart. What do I do? Do I even need a contract, or can I just go off POs and quotes?
You need a contract. You need a contract, either if you're on the general contractor side or if you're on the subcontractor side. I'll speak to groups that have a mix of both GCs and contractors. And sometimes people will give me a hard time. How can you be speaking out of both sides of your mouth? And I say, I'm not. In my mind, if you're having a contract negotiation,
Yeah.
it's not a game of gotcha. It's a game of or a discussion where both parties really have to understand the risk and how it's being assigned, and you can have very open and candid conversations about that. If I'm the subcontractor and you want me to take on more risk, I might build more into my pricing model to account for it. So contracts, I think, are an absolute must.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I mean, we always see things on the litigation side after something's gone wrong, right? And one of the things we like to see in contracts are well-defined scopes of work.
Okay.
So that if after the fact there's any question of which trade or who is responsible for a specific scope of work, it's in the contract. We get that, especially where different parts of a home, for example, come in contact with each other.
There's a transition zone. Yeah. Where does the kitchen end?
Siding to roofing, or you've got siding above the brick wainscoting, and the question comes, who did this flashing? Who was supposed to do this flashing?
Right.
So having well-defined scopes of work in the contracts is something that we absolutely like to see.
Yeah, I've often found that that's where I got in trouble. The bane of my existence was the neighbor's side of the fence. If I was painting that fence, because where does my customer's fence end and their side of the fence start? And there's a couple people out there that put it over on me, and I ended up having to paint their side of the fence too, because they said, well, there's a drip. It came through. Now you've got to do my fence too, or I'm going to make your life, what? And I'm just like, oh man, I can't do it. Like, I'm just painting a fence here, lady. Give me a break. These were the days before we knew that their name was Karen.
Right.
But imagine it was Karen, the internet Karen, before it was internet Karen.
Every person on the Homeowners Association board, I think, is named Karen.
The National Association of Karens. That's what we're going to call the HOA.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so funny and so true, by the way, that, having those discussions, and then there you go. You've got an HOA who thinks that they're out, that doesn't understand their scope and doesn't understand what the reality is of what a window cleaner cleans or what a asphalt contractor covers. Right. And decides, it's just with the wrong assumptions, runs it up the chain, and now the asphalt contractor's in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's problematic.
Well, what else do you want to walk us through here today? Because today we're talking about how not to get sued or survive it if you do. So those are two different sides of kind of the same coin, right?
Right. And some of them tie back to each other. So, from the pre-construction or construction phases, there are things that you can do, and we'll talk about, that ultimately help you if you do get sued also. So, looking at the risk reduction side of it, in that pre-construction or construction phase, I think the first things that come to mind are looking at whether the budget for a project can support some additional services, right? Not through lawyers, but through architects or engineers, either to do like a pre-construction plan review or a plan check, getting another set of eyes on the construction documents,
right,
before you start building it, in terms of, is this a good idea?
So quality control at the plan level, at the
quality control at the plan level.
Wow.
Absolutely. Especially if you're doing a design build, if you've done the design yourself, I think that I'd be looking at doing that, even that plan review on my own work. Are there any details I've missed? Are there any dimension busts in what I've drawn?
Yeah.
Is there going to lead to any constructability or quality issues if I actually go do this?
It's funny you say that, because peer review, I'm on the board of, this is going to sound very strange to some people because here I am, a construction industry expert, but I'm on the board of an application security and cloud security company. And, so they're dealing with hackers and ransomware attacks. That's what they're protecting their clients from. And one of the things that I've come to learn is that they're very interested in peer reviewing their code before they make it go live, for exactly the reason that you're talking about here is, look, I know how to code for ransomware or hacks or all these different types of commercial attacks, but I'm going to have somebody else check my work because I might have missed something, up at 2 a.m. living on Red Bull and coffee, which is a reality of their world as well. But what a great point. How come we're not doing that in construction?
I preach on it a lot, and I don't see it a lot, but it's not going to stop me from raising it as an issue or something I'd like to see done.
Yeah, interesting. It's funny that hasn't risen to the top before. There you go. We're going to give the Honorable David McLain the credit for that one entering the world. And then continuing on that QAQC front is during construction, right? A lot of the projects, at least in Colorado on the residential side historically, were insured through each of the parties' own commercial general liability policies, the annual renewable insurance programs. And we've seen those supplanted more and more by the OSIP or the CSIP wrap insurance programs that cover the GC, the developer, all of the subcontractors. Yeah.
And most of those wrap policies require an outside QAQC company to oversee construction. And I think that as long as you're paying for it anyway, and the people are going to be out there inspecting it anyway, I think more could be done with that opportunity. And what I mean by that is I've seen in Colorado some of the checklists that these companies will use, right? And we see that they're inspecting 100% of the hurricane tie downs and 10% of the windows, right? Which to me seems backwards. I've never paid out $1 in settlement or judgment on hurricane clips, but I've paid out tens of millions of dollars on windows.
Okay.
So if this guy's going to be out here anyway inspecting the project, why not, sit down with them ahead of time, either with a lawyer that does construction litigation or a defense expert, and say, how do we better align these inspections with what people are being sued for?
With the expectation, right? That the market.
Let's drop the inspections on hurricane clips to 10%, but I want you to look at 100% of the windows.
Huh.
Or 100% of the lightweight concrete decks over waterproof membrane.
That sounds very specific, David.
Yeah, I mean it's the low-hanging fruit.
It's on your desk right now, right?
And I can tell you from the notices of claim or the lawsuits we've seen where that low-hanging fruit is.
Yeah.
Right, on the building envelope issues, the window installation, flashings. And these are where the industry and the insurance industry are bleeding out, tens of millions of dollars in claims, right?
And so that's why they focus on it.
Yeah, years ago, I had one of the plaintiff's attorneys in Denver call me, and he said, "Dave, I've got a problem. I'm out here farming one of your clients' communities. We're pulling trim on these windows, and I just can't find anything wrong. So would you sit down with us? And there are some issues.
And help us find something wrong? Maybe I'm not following the story.
Well, he wanted a graceful way out to be able to tell the homeowners there's nothing here.
Oh,
we've gotten your asphalt issues resolved. I mean, there were some issues with when the second lift of the asphalt was put in during construction and the road was beat up. He essentially said, come sit down with us, work on some of these legitimate issues, and let us walk away from the rest. right? And to this day, it's probably the cheapest case I've ever settled. And we went back and looked at what was the difference between this project and our client's other projects, and it was the QAQC program was dialed in. They were inspecting and preventing the low-hanging fruit. So when the plaintiff's attorney came through, it wasn't worth his time
to go after it,
to try to make it a bigger issue.
I wonder how many, I mean, it's the job of the site super or the project manager to get these jobs through, but it's also their job to work with the inspectors. And when an inspector comes through and says, you're not installing that to spec, that cladding, that siding, that roofing, whatever it is, right? Like the screws have to be 6 inches apart. You've got them 5.5. And now an argument ensues. Who cares how far the screws are supposed to be? Except that structurally it's made for whatever reason, 6 inches, not 5.5. And it's such a different, ego gets wrapped up in it. Time, budget.
Right.
I almost said, well, ego, right? Whose hammer is bigger?
Right.
And I don't mean framing hammer.
I get it.
You got what I'm saying. How much of it? But it sounds to me like your story really came down to communication when you said this was the cheapest or the least expensive claim that you sort of processed. Is that the other lawyer called you and said, "Hey, listen, like, help me out here," and you guys just had a frank and open discussion here, professional to professional. And they're just the facts, stoically. You know what I mean by stoic? Just no emotion. Let's just talk about the facts on the table. How much do you think, in your experience as a lawyer, could be taken care of just by communicating better?
A lot of it, not everything, but a lot of it comes down to communication, right? We talked about it before, within the contracts, having scopes of work defined, who's doing what. I think that through the purchase and sale agreement of, let's say I'm building a home and I go to sell you the home, and I think that there's a lot to be gained by having a candid discussion when I sell you the house about the warranty. Look, I provide you a warranty because your house will not be perfect. It's the only.
What an interesting setup.
It's the only thing sold that's designed by humans, built by humans, of natural materials, in the elements, over time, for which people expect perfection. And it's an unrealistic expectation. Right. So we ask our builders, tell them there are going to be problems. I can't tell you now what it is, but you will absolutely find something wrong with this house. And when you do, call me. Here's my cell phone number. This is why we provide you a warranty. And these are the standards to be applied when you do see the crack in your drywall. Between settlement or shrinkage of the lumber, you're going to see cracks in your drywall. If it's less than a 1/16 of an inch, that's to be expected. It's a cosmetic issue, and you'll take care of it in your next painting cycle. Don't call me for that, but if it's 1/8 of an inch, call me, and I will come back and take care of it.
That's a big gap in drywall, 1/8 of an inch.
So I think the expectation setting on the front end is another communication area. When we talk about homeowners associations, I think a lot of times the builder developer loses contact. They hire the property management company, close out the community and leave, right? And aren't there when the drum beats start beating and they start getting riled up before they hire an attorney. The easiest and cheapest time to head a claim off is before they've lawyered up, right?
Get in there and take care of it.
So we'll ask clients to, if you're setting up an association, to put in the declaration the fact that they have the obligation to give you meeting minutes through the statute of repose, and that you have the right but not the obligation to attend meetings through the statute of repose. I just want to know what's going on. I want to make sure that the homeowners are remaining happy. And if those drum beats start, I want to hear it immediately.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you're taking a very proactive stance.
Right.
What is the name for that in the military? It's a preemptive counterattack.
Right.
That was Colin Powell, I think.
I've joked about it. back to the communication front, nobody's taken me up on this idea yet. But I'd like to see, as builders walk out of those communities, doing an educational series for the homeowners and the management company, and talk about commissioning of systems. Right? Here's how the system operates. If it goes down, here's how you restart it. Maintenance obligations. Right? I mean, we talk about, as a defense in the case, deferred maintenance. You didn't check
your gutters, wash your windows.
Yeah, you didn't check the caulking every year. You didn't clean your gutters. You didn't, put the seal coat on the asphalt down when you were supposed to. And we always hear back, well, where did you tell us we were supposed to do that? And by and large, we haven't, right, as the builder. So, make that part of this educational series also.
I'm feeling very guilty right now, because I know right now I have gutters that have not been cleaned in this one tough part of my house. And as I left this morning, I could see splashes up against my garage, and I'm like, why is it wet there? And I looked up and I'm like, I didn't do it. But, and a homeowner is not necessarily a home maintainer. They don't know to check the caulking. They usually laugh at that word the first time they hear it anyways. Right. But they don't understand that gaskets erode over time, or that if you put a planter underneath your downspout and it now ejects all that water into the planter, and that dirt now goes into the drain, and now your drain tile fills it. We don't know because we don't know.
Right.
Homeowners don't know because they don't know.
Right. So this is the part of that's the communication to tell them. This is what's on you. As part of that, the part that nobody's taken me up on is the educational content. I'm telling the homeowners or the association, 5 minutes after we leave, these 3 plaintiffs' law firms are going to show up, and here's the pitch they're going to make you.
Right. You bought the worst house ever built.
Here's the scare tactics they use. And when you hear these things, here's the downside. Here's what they're not telling you. But it's in your best interest. If you do have problems, your best interest is to call us and let us come out and fix it. Otherwise, the attorneys win.
Yeah, I do love seeing the van that is nicely logoed that says this is the service vehicle for the HOA.
Right.
We're here to make sure you're okay. And that poor guy's running off his feet, but he's there, and people at least know, and it's okay. You're not going to be here today, but you'll be here Tuesday. And so I imagine some of that risk mitigation goes a long way.
Right.
On this subject, it's a bit of a shift inside of our topic, but when I'm a builder and I use software to track the build, like software with images and timestamps and daily reports and things like that, how valuable is that when, how not to get sued is the thing. When I come back to somebody and say, actually, we did all the steps and here it is, GPS noted, time-stamped, video, pictures, etc. How valuable is that to you? Or how much do you look at that and say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, please stop. No, this is not going to work.
I've done it both ways. I mean, I think documentation is huge and is very important if it's done correctly. And I'll just give a quick example. Years ago, we had a client that did have a third-party QAQC company documenting issues during construction.
Right.
And when the case came in, they sent us all the pictures of all of the things that were wrong. And the question was, well, where are the photographs that show that it was corrected? And I said, well, we didn't document that. In some of these instances, we disagreed that there was anything wrong, so we didn't do it. We didn't do anything. Like, so the only documentation you have is this engineer telling you it was wrong. If that's how you're using your system, don't do it.
Oh, I see.
Because all you're documenting are the failures, the things that are wrong, and not the corrections. Right? So if you're going to document something that's wrong, you have to go back and take the next photograph of the repair, right? Or have the corresponding report from the engineer. This issue came up. Here's how it was resolved. To my satisfaction, here's the stamp, which is the right way to do it. If you're doing it the right way, I love it.
Yeah.
Right. And we see a lot of photographs and People will videotape the conditions before it's covered up, right? We're gonna go through and we'll video the framing, the plumbing, the mechanical installation before we hang drywall.
Right. So we
And in a
can
lot
see
of
all the
those
mechanicals.
Yeah, a lot of those cases, that's huge when the attorneys are arguing about what's behind there, and doing some random sampling and trying to extrapolate across the whole. If we've got photographs or videotapes of what's behind there, we don't need to extrapolate.
Right.
We know what it
see
is. Yeah, it's demonstrable. So hopefully it's documenting the correct condition.
Well, what people hear about on this show a lot is the power of simple systems. And so if one of the systems in your company, I'm speaking to the listeners here, not David, but if one of the systems or processes in your company is that you have preset times that your crew takes pictures or videos of work in progress, you can head off a lot of problems. But also if a problem does come up, or if you need to hang something on a wall and you're actually not sure where the plumbing comes down, because especially in renovations, things can get wonky, when you're trying to retrofit something. It sure is handy to know that, we had to offset this by 6 inches because of the slab, the post, the whatever, and then we don't drill into it and suddenly have a leak or sewage,
right?
or other fun things. My cousins had a problem and this is all work they were doing on their own. They had a problem in their bathroom floor, and they happened to mention it to their dad. And so he drilled a hole through the floor up into the bathroom. But what he didn't know or didn't care about is that they had in-floor heating. And by some miracle of whatever God you believe in, he went in between the cells and didn't wreck the in-floor heating.
Did have a kitchen full of glycol.
I will not tell you what city or jurisdiction they're in, but yeah. Of course, my two cousins are like, you won't believe what my dad did. I'm like, oh, man. But you know what? It turned out okay. But to a fraction of an inch, he randomly jabbed a drill bit up through there and made it work.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. But those are the kinds of things that we want to avoid because, as you said, those chemicals getting out, that house now, you have to claim that forever. On the sale or resale of that property, and then it gets attached to your name as a builder, and none of those are fun things. That's not why we go into business, to cause
absolutely not
problems. Yeah. This might sound crazy to you, but very often people don't have contracts. They don't have agreements, and one of the places that's becoming a problem right now is with material price increases or material substitutions or delay of the job because we simply can't get product X or Y or Z. Where are you seeing, or what are the trends you're seeing right now with people that do have agreements in taking care of that?
We're working on a lot of addenda at the moment. We've got this contract in place, entered it in the before times, pre-COVID.
The before times? Is that what it's called?
Before times.
That's good. Yeah.
But so we're seeing a lot of interest and demand now for material escalation clauses.
What's a material escalation clause?
From the subcontractor's perspective, if you have a hard bid contract, I'm going to go do the electrical systems in your apartment projects for $2 million.
Yeah.
When I bid that project internally, I knew what the price of copper was. Mm-hmm. It's now gone up 300%. And if I do this job, I'm going to lose my shirt.
Yeah.
Right? So the escalation clause just provides some thresholds and says, if the cost of copper goes up more than 10%, we have the right to adjust the contract price, which is huge. And the same thing with time delays on projects, getting some relief for that.
Okay.
Another one we're seeing a little bit of in the industry has to do with COVID vaccination and reporting requirements.
On site.
Yeah, we've had some clients that are saying, I'm happy to do your work, but I'm not going to go tell my guys that they need to be vaccinated. I'm not going to ask them, and you're not going to ask me. So looking at that for now in the United States, companies of fewer than 100 people,
Yeah.
and not federal projects, but
Private enterprise. That's classic private enterprise.
right.
Probably under 20. Yeah, is is the bulk of it.
So I mean, those are probably the ones we've seen the most lately on, even when people have contracts, how do I get a clause for this or get language for that?
I've seen, just to trade, I guess, industry trivia, I've seen flexibility from GCs and builders, or like developers, that I haven't seen in the past. And specifically, I'm thinking about the cabinetry guys that I deal with. But when they're doing architectural millwork, right now they've been going back to the GCs and the developers and saying, look, we can buy the product, all this white ash that you need, or white birch, whatever the product is, we can buy it today. I know we can get it today. Can we buy it today, even though the project won't start for 6 or 9 months? And 2 cases now, the developer has said yes, because they want, there's a certain style they're trying to meet. They need to hit timelines, and they don't want to move on quality of build because they've sold to a certain standard.
Right.
And in both cases, they said yes, buy the product, and yes, we'll pay the storage.
Yeah.
You just got to ask.
Which is smart from their perspective, because you can, even though, you think what your lead time is today,
Right.
but what's my lead time going to be in 3 months? I don't know.
Yeah. And the quality of product, it's just, I guess they're, as you pointed out, they're also not going to be subject to the price increases and getting a surprise bill that said the copper's gone up 300%. Or I think in Pennsylvania, sheets of certain types of plywood have gone up $32 per sheet.
Yeah.
That's an increase per sheet. It used to be $32 a sheet. Now, Lord knows.
We're starting to see some relief on the lumber side of it, between the dimensional lumber. OSB is starting to get closer to where it should be, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, it's weird, a weird world. David, thank you so much for walking us through this. It's obviously a pretty complex thing, but I also like the simplicity you brought. It's just communicating.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it.
I'm still giggling that a lawyer from the other side, quote unquote, called you and said, Dave, help me out here, man. I can't find anything.
I can't find anything wrong.
It sounds like the makings of a great TV show. Sounds like the makings of another lawyer show.
Could have been.
Yeah. Mr. McLain, if we would like to get in touch with you and find out more, how would we find you in this big wide world?
You can call me or email me. My telephone number is 303-987-9813. Or you can email me. My email address is McLain, MCLAIN, @hhmrlaw.com. And then we do also have a blog. It's more geared towards Colorado, but a lot of these topics we talk about on our blog. That's coloradoconstructionlitigation.com. It's another source just for geeking out on construction risk management.
I won't make any comments. Somebody out there is writing it down saying, well, that sounds extremely interesting. I can't wait to check it out.
It's interesting to me. I didn't know this stuff.
It is, I tell you, it becomes extremely interesting when somebody accuses me of not following QA or QC standards, or of acting, through business in the wrong, all these slabs are crooked or something, whatever it is, then it becomes very interesting. Very, very, very interesting at that time. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you giving us some legal insight today on the show, and hopefully we'll have you back again one day.
Fair enough. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care.